Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's recording now.
Cool. Well, I think since we started to record, I will just jump ahead into our introductions here. So to start off, I'll introduce myself for anyone who may be new, and then I'll have the rest of the e-board introduce themselves as well. My name is Kellen Amy. I am in my third semester of the MI program here at Rutgers. I am concentrating in archives and preservation, obviously. And I am the president of Source for this semester slash academic year. And so I'll pass it along to Hildy to give your own introduction.
Hi, I'm Hilda Krieger. This is my last semester in the program. I'm also in the Archives and Preservations track. I'm currently taking digital curation, digital preservation, and I live in Highland Park across the river from New Brunswick campus. Jilly, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Jilly. It's also my last semester taking digital curation, information visualization, presentation, and records management. And I'm the webmaster. And then I'll pass it off to Tallulah.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tallulah. I'm in my third semester now of the MI program. I'm actually specializing in library and information science, but I'm sort of taking classes from both and trying to work in both and internships and stuff. So, um, yeah, super excited for the event. I'll hand it back to you, Kellen.
Alrighty. So let's go jump on ahead and introduce our speaker for this evening. Tonight, our speaker is Kayla Doyle, who is the Curator of Archives at the Liberty Hall Museum, located in Union, New Jersey. Liberty Hall was the home of storied New Jersey politicians, elected officials, families, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists, including the first elected governor of the state, William Livingston, and the Kean family, up until the early 2000s. Built in 1772, the now 50-room Victorian mansion transitioned into a museum, arboretum, and garden space around 2000, focusing on telling the history of the individuals who inhabited the grounds, but also the social, cultural, and political history of the state. Kayla has worked at Liberty Hall since 2019, becoming the curator of archives earlier this year. Kayla graduated with a master's degree in museum studies from the University of New York and has previously worked as a museum registrar at Monmouth County Park System. Since becoming the curator of archives, Kayla and the team at Liberty Hall have worked to restore the archival collections to a higher standard. Recently, receiving a New Jersey State Career Accelerator internship grant, Kayla brought along two interns who worked throughout the summer of this year to begin processing the archival collection. I was fortunate enough to be one of those interns. And to continue, please join me in welcoming Kayla. And you're
Yay.
welcome to share your screen whenever you are ready.
Okay, let me. Okay, did I do this right?
Oh, you're good.
Okay, perfect. So hello everyone. I'm Kayla from Liberty Hall, and I'm kind of going to be talking about how I started the process of creating an archive from absolute chaos, and Kellen can certainly attest from that experience that he had over the summer. So I know Kellen introduced Liberty Hall, but just to kind of have an image of what the museum looks like. So we are the big yellow house that it sits on Morris Avenue across the street from Kean University. So if you ever drive on that road, you can see us from Morris Avenue. This is the front of the house, and it was built in 1772 by William Livingston. It started as a 14-room mansion, and over the generations, it grew to 50, which is quite impressive. I don't even know if I've been in all the rooms or seen all the rooms, and I've been there for 6 years now. So just to have a face to William Livingston, this is William Livingston. He was our first elected governor for the state of New Jersey. He served 14 terms, but back then they were one-year terms because there was zero trust in the government, and they served the one-year term, so it was consecutively from 1776 until he died in 1790. What's interesting about Liberty Hall, this was actually William Livingston's retirement dream home. And he just wanted to retire to the countryside, but doesn't really get to enjoy the land because the American Revolution breaks out and he answers the call to serve the Patriots. So oftentimes he wasn't even at Liberty Hall, he was hiding, but British would storm in search of Livingston. So there's a couple of family legends of the British coming in and, messing with the family. So this was our first resident. And then we have our last resident, Mary Alice Barney Kane. So she moves into the house right after she marries Captain John Kane. This is about 1925, and she lives in this house until the day she dies in 1995. So when you look inside the mansion, or I don't want to call it mansion, but estate, you see history, but you also see like things from the 90s inside the house because she lived there until 1995. So it's really cool to see the combination of both historic and modern. And her dying wish was to convert her home into a museum. And her children carry on the mission because we officially open up as a museum in the year 2000. We have about 20 interpreted rooms. So this is our dining room. And through the doorway that's over here, this is the library, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But just to see one example of the interpretation of the room. We also have 15 historically preserved acres of land. So this is our back garden, and the bushes are in the shape of two angels. And throughout the year, flowers, different species of flowers grow in between the hedges. And this goes back to a different relative that lived at the museum, and he created various types of gardens, English garden, pleasure gardens. So that was an addition to the property. We also have a series of outbuildings. We have a wagon shed, carriage house, smoke house, and ice house. Keep the ice house in mind because that building's gonna be important a little later on. And of course, we have a firehouse museum because one of the last children to grow up at Liberty Hall, he enjoyed collecting anything pertaining to the fire fighting, even though he was never a firefighter. So we have three historic fire trucks and a bunch of different memorabilia. And the Blue House, which is our visitor center. I'm a nerd with historic structures. This house actually was never on the property. It was farther down on Morris Avenue, so they literally just picked up this house and moved it here, one, to preserve it and to make it the visitor center. So when you walk, it's very, it slants because of the way it settled when it was moved. But a little bit about me. So I initially got a bachelor's degree in history and education. So I originally went to school for education and I went to Kean University, so across the street from where I work. Then I decided I wanted to get a master's degree in museum studies. And I've been at Liberty Hall since 2019. I was a museum educator at first, and then around 2020, I decided, hey, I have an interest in collections and working with the actual objects. Let me get some experience. And then the collections manager left, and I was asked if I wanted the job, and I said, sure, even though I'm still learning about collections and preserving items. Then I got another internship, paid internship at the Monmouth County Park System doing collections management. And then they asked me if I wanted to work full time. So I was there from 2021 to 2025 while also still working at Liberty Hall part-time back as an educator. So I did everything you can imagine a museum registrar, collections management person does, from curating exhibits to putting out small fires of things that break or tree branches that come into a building and you're like, what do you do with the collection? So I experienced a lot on that job. And then this past March, I got full-time at Liberty Hall as the Curator of Archives, and I'm also the chair of the America 250 committee. So I've been planning events all for next year. So we have a lot of exciting things happening, which I'm looking forward to. And most of my experience comes from on the job of pertaining to the archives and library. I have no education knowledge. My experience is all on the job, so I do research of like what is best practice, and I do reach out to the contacts that I have in the field and be like, "Hey, what are your recommendations?" So that's a little bit about me. For the collection at Liberty Hall, so far what I've found are letters, business records from various family businesses. The Keans were part of the railroad industry, oil, gas, the banking. Basically, they had their hands in everything. Their taxes, they did pay taxes. I can attest to that. Diaries, journals, political papers. We have a lot of politicians from the Kean family. They were assemblymen, congressmen, and governors. We have pamphlets, anything from political pamphlets to garden pamphlets, anything you can imagine we have. Scrapbooks. So, one of the scrapbooks that makes me mad, we have a scrapbook from about the 1860s, it was created. And it has a letter of George Washington and a letter from Thomas Jefferson in it, and it's pasted in the book. So you can imagine how upsetting it is that I can't remove the letter from the book. But hey, they didn't know better back then. We have a lot of postcards. The family traveled extensively throughout Europe and in some countries in Asia. We have so many photographs. Some of the people I don't even know who they are, so I'm still trying to figure out who they are. Ledger books, these are either business records or they're personal diaries, but they're in a bound book. Where other journals, they might be loose paper and blueprints. The blueprints are cool because they actually provide us information of how they either expanded upon the house or built some of the buildings on the property. And my personal favorite from the whole collection is actually our flower press book. So this is one of the flower press books that someone collected while they were on their honeymoon in 1849. The person went on a honeymoon for a year, and then when she came back, her husband died. So she was in Pompeii, and the flower is from Pompeii, and she sewed it into the book. And each page is some other location that she went to. So I really like the press books that we have. So where the archive is and where Kellen worked is in the library. And I found these photographs for one of my coworkers that was actually doing a presentation on, I think, the history of the books that we have in our collection. So the library in 1985, it was this bright red, kind of like a bachelor pad looking room. And then once we became a museum and we started interpreting the rooms, this is what the library looked like in 2005. And honestly, the room kind of, I don't know, still creeps me out a little bit in 2005. And Kellen, look how clean the archive is. Look how clean it is. So a couple of weeks ago, we had our fall fundraiser event, and I found out that it's going to happen in this room. So I had to clean up the archive. I have a couple of pictures of what it looks like later on, but this is what it kind of looks like now. So it's a lot more brighter, a little more work-friendly, comfortable space. And the natural lighting in this room is perfect for the archive as well. This is where all of the documents are. They are in plastic bins. Some of them might be in folders, most of them acidic, and they are in those terrible binder plastic sheets that just makes your skin crawl. So it is a living nightmare and it's very overwhelming to look at, and we've made a lot of progress. Hence, you could see on the right side a lot of the bins empty. But I just, where do you begin? it's a giant pile of stress when you walk into this room and you're like, where do you even start? So I initially just took a deep breath and I'm like, okay, this is the job I'm handed. Where do I even start? Someone before me, she began to kind of look at the archive and was doing it in a step-by-step process, which I know that's probably the best way to do it, but I'm not a step-by-step person. I'm more like, okay, let me see what this is, let me see what that is, and just get an overall sense of what the archive was. So I went through each container. Luckily, the former archivist kind of had a brain and labeled the container. However, we quickly found out, as Kellen experienced, that some of the containers were no longer labeled correctly. So that was a fallback. But I said, okay, what can I prioritize? And I said anything that is from the 1700s, anything that pertains to the history of the enslaved people at Liberty Hall, or anything that was relatively significant to the overall museum, that is what I'm going to prioritize, get them out of this room, and I'm going to put them in folders, in boxes, in our temperature controlled building. So the reason why I picked 1700s is we're technically not supposed to have anything prior to 1846 except for 100 documents. It was a very weird situation where all of the stuff pre-1846 got donated to Kean University. We're all upset about it still, and it's been almost 10 years. But we're lucky that we keep finding things from the 1700s. And I'm like, you know what? Even though the former archivist was not very good at his job, thank you for hiding some of this stuff in random boxes because the things that I'm finding, they're like receipts of items that we actually have in the house or letters that we didn't know we had or even documents pertaining to the history of the enslaved people. I'm like, do we even know that we had this? Like, was this something that we were aware of? And nope. I found a William Livingston letter, not really a letter, but proclamation when he was governor of New Jersey, making people pay a tax on dogs because they kept eating sheep. So if you own a dog, you had to pay a tax. And we had no clue we had this because it was just buried in a box. So these little finds, I'm like, okay, so it's worth prioritizing the 1700s. And then as I've gone through boxes, we kind of organized it by person and started creating these classifications like, okay, these are letters. These are John Kean 1814 letters from 1840s. We'll put it in this folder, in this box, and then started labeled the boxes, uh, John Kean 1814 letters. Um, oh, and then as I've gone through and Kellen has witnessed, we've changed our minds of how we organized and gone back and forth with what we thought was the best way. So I reassess all the time, at least once a month. I'm like, am I doing it right? Is this process working for me? And then I ask someone else, come into the archive. Do you think this process makes sense? Or how can I change it to make it better? And just to kind of show what the initial sorting and labeling looks like, this is what we did. Kellen wrote all of the white papers. Yes, I did use this picture. So just to kind of show like the craziness of the archive and how we initially organize things because there's just so much. It's impossible to just pick one thing to focus on. So I thought it was best to just kind of do like a general sort and see what we have the most of and what we can focus on. And that's how we kept going. So we discovered that letters, correspondences, and receipts were top priority. As we've asked staff what kind of items they would use frequently. And then eventually we got to a point over this past summer, which I didn't even expect us to get to, where we started creating series and a finding aid, and the finding aid keeps changing. I'm pretty sure it's different from when you last saw it, Kellen, because I'm like, okay, actually, this looks a lot better. So we thought it was best to divide into series and subseries. So at first, we're like, okay, we'll do letters and correspondence by person and date just to kind of simplify things. And then as we've kept going and making progress, we're like, okay, we're going to have to start detailing this out. How can we detail it out further? So that's when we brought in the subseries. So for letters, we separated by personal letters that don't have any connection to like a kin relative. So by that, I mean all letters between John Kean 1814 and his wife Lucinetta Halstead, the to and from, they are now in the same box together, and the folders are labeled letter John Kean 1814 from Lucinetta, and then the date. And then the same thing, Lucinetta from John Kean 1814. That way it kind of reads like a story. And the other curator that I work with, she handles more of the objects than the archives. She agreed that reading it like a story best is best organized. Another example is receipts. So at first we were organizing it by person and date, and then we're like, okay, how can we detail this out? So we started detailing out based off of either what they were buying or what types of goods. So we created topics such as household goods, clothing, travel, housework, jewelry, silver, you name it, that's what it is. And then within that overall topic, like household goods, we further divided it and organized it based off of what it was. So, like furniture, textiles, clothing, hats, shoes, roof repairs, plumber, things like that. So it's more organized in the box. Political papers, this was a challenge, and it took a long time for us to figure out how we wanted to organize it. And initially, it was by person and date, and that was it. And then as we went through, we call him Senator John Kean, but he's John Kean 1852. We're like, okay, so we'll organize it based off of the years he was in office. So for House of Representative, we did, I think it was 1883 to 1885, and all of the people he corresponded with within those years. And then same thing for House of Representative, 1887 to 1889, and then all the other years that he held office. And this kind of gave the picture of, okay, this is what he did while he was in DC. And that's going to be the same for another Kean family member, Hamilton Fish Kean, who was also a senator in the, I think he was elected in 1929 or 1928, somewhere around there. So his records will follow the standard of John Kean 1852. Again, the finding aid still is in the early stages, and I'm constantly updating it. But now I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, okay, it's starting to look good. And I'm hoping to invite the staff back into the archive and see if they can find the document they're looking for using the finding aid. But I'll talk a little bit about that a little later on. So right now, Kellen, you haven't seen this, but this is how I've organized the receipts for the most part and one of the family business records. So this is in our rare book room. And luckily, one thing about the rare book room is that there's shelving. So even though it's not in my temperature controlled environment, it is off the floor and it is safely on a shelf. And for right now, I'm like, that is good enough. And so I have it organized. It's out of order of boxes. So box 4, receipts, household goods. So if I go in box 4, I know I'm looking at household goods. So this is kind of like the beginning stages of the organizing into the way I want my finding aid to look like. And I found that doing the finding aid and organizing the documents at the same time, it kind of helps because I'm like, how do I envision this archive being? How do I see it in the future? So having that in the back of my mind and working on both things at the same time, I found useful because I'm able to adjust as I go along. So my storage building is my ice house. The ice house is pretty cool. Little history behind it. So Colonel John Kane, he had this ice house put on the property, and they would have ice delivered. And in each slot of the tall, I'm going to say like off-white colored squares, they would have ice delivered. And then when they wanted to put more ice in the refrigerator inside the house, they would just take it out and put it in the refrigerator inside. Well, because it's made out of concrete and the initial use of it was for ice, it was the perfect building to retrofit into our temperature controlled environment. This building, it is constantly, and I mean constantly, monitored by our Director of Buildings and Grounds person. He has the alerts on his phone. If it drops 1% or 1 degree, he will go into this building and be like, what's going on? And I actually found out we just got a grant to get a updated HVAC system and a more environmentally friendly one because this uses a lot of power and electricity to maintain at the correct temperature that we want, which is 72 degrees and I think it's 40% humidity, but it stays at 30%. So we're going to be updating the system, and I'm super excited about it. When you go into this building, I don't know if you could see my mouse, but there's a door right here that is disguised to look like the slots. And you go into this door and you enter the first floor. The first floor is my space. That's the archive. Right now, it's not how I envision it. It is just kind of a mess. So I'm hoping to kind of get the books that are in this building out and put the documents in here. Now, the books that are considered rare, they will stay in the building. But there's books in here where I'm like, they don't really need to be in here. They can go into the research collection. And then the second floor, the staircase, it's a spiral staircase that is kind of like a death trap, but it works. The second floor is where the curator of collections, she stores her things up there. There's also a locked cabinet up there, which is where we store the 100 documents, which is anything before 1846 as of right now. And that's going to change as I keep going through the stuff and organize it further. And yes, I did put a picture from the summer. So I was very fortunate. Well, I didn't apply for the grants before I started. The curator of collection applied for the grant for the archive. And I was able to have two archival interns that knew so much knowledge about the archive. I'm like, okay, good picks that I had. And I'm hoping that next year we can apply for the grant and get one collection, one archival intern. But who knows, the state is dragging their feet with releasing information. But having two paid, experienced interns really, really helped this project progress because it's just me right now. And I feel like I'm not doing as much as we were doing in the summertime because it's just one person. So I'm truly thankful for the hard work that both Kellen and Maura did because I didn't even think we would get to finish and do a finding aid and at least have something completed. And I feel like over the summer, it didn't seem like we made any progress, but seeing the plastic bins being tossed into the dumpster or going home with a worker, it was rewarding in that aspect. So another thing that we were able to do because I had wonderful help over the summer was do an archives day. And this was a scavenger hunt for the museum staff. So buildings and grounds people, educators, membership. Anyone was welcome to come and participate in the scavenger hunt. And this was a tool that we used to see the organization structure, to see how good it was, how bad it was, and just get overall feedback. And this was another opportunity that we figured out what we should prioritize. So we were on the right track of prioritizing the letters and the receipts. But a lot of the educators were asking about documents pertaining to the history of enslaved people. And I'm like, okay, that'll be prioritized next. So we gone through all those documents, but I'm still finding more. I found a couple of more over the last like 2 months. So I let the curator of collections know because she's developing an exhibition on that. So constantly finding new things, and I was super glad that we were able to have the staff come in and look into the archive and see the progress that's being made, because a lot of them would ask, what do you do in the archive? And I'm like, well, you can always come up and see what it looks like. And they're like, oh, no, that's fine. So the fact that most of the staff participated in this and then they fully understood what was occurring in the archive, they were like, oh, I get it now. And then as we've gone through the chaos over the summer, I was like, okay, how can we keep it fun? How can we keep it interesting? So we decided to do finds of the week. So I got a whiteboard and we would write down, what did we find this week that we thought was interesting or cool? And we just set these letters aside. So if someone stumbled into the archive, like Mr. Kane, who is the president of the museum, we're like, hey, we found this. We could show off. So one thing we found was a letter from uh, President Grant and Mrs. Grant declining an invitation to John Kane 1814 daughter's wedding. So the Grants were invited to the Kane wedding, but they declined. The middle letter Kellen found, it was a former enslaved person who fought in the Civil War, was asking for or trying to get help to get a pension because John Kane, 1852, worked on this pension committee for Civil War veterans. So this was a cool letter to find. And then all the way on the right, I found this, I think like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a letter from J.D. Rockefeller Jr.'s wife, thanking John Kane 1852 for dinner or something like that, or sending a gift. So I was like, oh wow, like I just visited the Rockefeller's estate in New York, and then I find this letter. So I was like, oh, we have a connection. This is cool. So this was a way to kind of keep us from being consumed by the chaos and make it fun going through the archive, which I think was fun. I don't know. Helen agrees. So during this whole process, we came across a lot of challenges. So obviously a big one is the previous archivist's inexperience with his plastic. But overall, I think his inexperience and inability to make sure that he gave everything to Kean University worked in our benefit, because we were able to have some of these documents that would have gone to the university. And I feel like if the former archivist knew what he was doing, it wouldn't be this bad. And there is no original order. That does not exist in this archive. It is just boxes and boxes of documents piled up on top of each other and letters still inside the envelope. Or I think the former archivist took the letter and separated it from the envelope because of the stamp. The Canes were big on stamp collecting, and they decided to separate the letter from the envelope. So my delusion is hopefully one day I can match up the letter to the envelope. So I have boxes and boxes and plastic bags full of envelopes because this person decided to separate it from the letter. So you can imagine the craziness that I experience. Also, a challenge is funding. So even though we got a state grant like in July we heard back and we just got the money for archival supplies. It is going to run out because of how much work is needed for the archive. So funding is definitely a big factor in what can we purchase to help the documents and books and every material that we have. So that's something that I'm going to have to start thinking about of applying to more grants, but the grant money is going to dry up probably in 2 years, if not sooner. So it's definitely a challenge. And on in the back of my mind, staff, that's a huge challenge because unfortunately, Liberty Hall, like the only way we were able to have the two paid summer interns was through a grant. And hopefully we can get that grant again, but any other opportunity that the museum has is unfortunately going to be unpaid. And I feel bad, and I know the curator of collections feels bad too of having these unpaid internships, and it's just hard. So staff, even though it's just me, like I feel bad not offering paid positions. So staffing is definitely a challenge, and environmental. You never know what you're going to walk into. Two examples that stick out to me, which I'm actually going to be presenting at a conference about, is one day, well, when we did the archives day, the house took on water because there was a bad rainstorm and the basement flooded a little bit and our boiler room flooded. So the curator of collection wasn't in, but because of my background in collection management, she was okay with me safely removing the objects from the maybe like 3 inches of water that they were sitting in and moving it and laying it out and trying to let them dry. So this happened about like 2 hours before Archives Day. And I'm like, okay, some people might not like join in on Archives Day because of this issue, but everyone showed up. So I'm like, thank you. I appreciate it dealing with this. Another example that really sticks out to me, and to this day, I'm still petrified of walking in and it happening again. So we have these wall-mounted air conditioning and heating units. And I know, okay, we're not going to put any documents underneath them because, God forbid, there's a waterfall. Yeah, you want to know what happened one day? Waterfall. I'm talking to someone. I think we were trash talking about ghost or something at the museum, and we said something, and all of a sudden I hear this rushing water just come out. It was like literally a waterfall coming out, and I'm like, okay, so I'm on the phone with the director of buildings and grounds. I'm leaving a voicemail trying not to cry. And then he finally picks up and I'm like, you gotta get here right now. And I'm like, do not listen to that voicemail because I'm crying on the phone. And it turns out these AC units, they build up slime, and that's what causes it not to like go out the right way outside. And so this buildup water just got released. Luckily, and I mean luckily, the only documents that were under it was like two document boxes, which I was on the fence about of having them be like the past the temporary storage phase. So I'm like, okay, not a huge loss. And the only documents that were super affected were transcriptions. So I'm like, I'll take that. And the documents that were in the binder that got wet were in plastic sheets. So I can't criticize the former archivist too much because his poor choices were actually helpful in damage. So I'm like, okay, he did save me there. Thank you, Ken. So again, you never know what you're going to expect when you walk into work. So you have one idea of what you're going to accomplish, and the environment decides another. Because of this incident, we did have a plumber come out and set up another system for drainage. So far, so good. I do hear it turn on, and I'm like, okay, you're doing your jobs, but I still don't trust it, and I don't put anything under them. Um, so some projects that I'm currently working on, I'm going back and organizing the letters and receipts into the established series and sub-series. And I've already mostly completed the important documents first, and now I'm moving on to the oldest Kane family member to the youngest. So John Kane, 1814, was first, and now I'm moving on to Lucinetta. So I'm back with Lucinetta again. Future projects. So we are currently applying for a grant to get a high resolution scanner. However, I don't foresee that money being available because it's through the National Archive. And well, we all know what's happening now. We are, or I'm hoping to assess the larger documents for flat storage because part of the grant that we got through the state, we did budget for a flat file storage. So I want to just do a quick assessment to see how many folders I'm going to have to purchase and things of that nature. I also want to finish the photograph collection. It's about halfway done. It's not perfect the way I want it, but at least it's better organized. I also want to begin the postcard collection sorting and seeing what the best way to organize it, because again, they are just stacked in boxes and plastic bags. And I want to talk to the director of buildings and grounds to kind of assess the shelving in the ice house. In library science. So he's helping me go through our rare books and library research collection to see what we can move to the ice house, what we can take out of the ice house to make room, and also begin organizing the institutional history. I had people start looking in their offices for things to give, but I keep finding stuff in the actual historic archive. So just trying to separate everything out to have it in one collection or the other. Again, as I mentioned, opportunities. So hopefully in the spring or this summer, I'm going to be looking for an archival internship. Again, unless we get the grant, again, it's going to be an unpaid opportunity. So this internship would either help me with whatever I'm currently working on, or if you had a personal interest in books and you wanted to work with books, I'm open to that. And all the information for that will be on the Liberty Hall's website under About and then Opportunities. It'll be posted there. And then this is just our contact information, our phone number, and our website. And when we're open to the public, so we're open Wednesdays through Sundays, 11 to 3, or by appointment. So that's all I have for you. It's kind of a lot.
Alrighty, well, thank you, Kayla, for that fantastic presentation. Definitely relate to all those experiences, and it is a very valuable opportunity overall, being able to be in a position where you have to make something out of a lot of other things, and it teaches you a lot about where to prioritize if you came into an archive
Yeah.
or some kind of collection on your own. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, you can submit them in the chat or unmute yourself, whatever works best for you, for Kayla. And if not, I also have some questions that I have prepared, and so we can go ahead with that if anyone has any questions.
Kayla, I was wondering how being in the physical space on the estate maybe helps interpret the archival documents, and do you ever feel like it's an obstacle? Um,
So I think I'm at, compared to the curator of collection, I think I'm at an advantage because she doesn't know the whole history because she didn't start as a museum educator. Where me, I started as a museum educator. I know the history of the property, and to me, I feel like I am the professional creep of the Livingston and Kean family because I know the tour information and I also know their personal lives. So I don't see it as a disadvantage. I think I have the advantage compared to our curator of collection. And I'm thankful for knowing the history because I know for Kellen and Maura, they were at a huge disadvantage because I'm trying to tell them the difference between John Kane 1814 and John Kane 1852, and it gets confusing, but it's like, okay, if you know what their job was and what they did during their lifetime, it makes it easier to kind of go through the archive.
Thanks.
I'll jump in here. Kind of jumping back, and you touched on it before about working at Monmouth County and working at Liberty Hall part time, and then having the opportunity to jump into this curator of archives position. When you were in that part of your life, how important was it for you to value the opportunity for career advancement? I mean, archives are inherently complex and that many places need to hire one person, and that one person can be there for a year or they can be there for 50 years, and makes the field kind of volatile in who's working where. And so just wondering what your perspective was on the idea of career advancement into something that you may not have had a lot of background in.
So when I first applied for Liberty Hall, I didn't expect to make this my career. I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher. So once I started working at Liberty Hall and I fell in love working in an actual museum, which if you don't have experience in the field, I highly recommend getting experience because dreaming and thinking about working in a field and then actually working in the field, two completely different things. I dreamed about being a teacher. I completed the degree and I'm like, you know what? I'm good. And now that I have this opportunity to be at Liberty Hall and then also the park system, it definitely advanced my career because I found out about the opportunity for the park system job through Liberty Hall because someone had an email from Seton Hall and that's where the job was posted on. So it was forwarded to me and I was like, sure, I'll apply. Like, why not? And this field is all about who you know and the connections you make. And a lot of times places hire internally. My job, both jobs, well, the park system job it did go out so people outside could apply, but most of the time small museums, they hire within, so you work your way up, and then if an opportunity comes about, someone retires when they want to 50 years later, then a full-time position opens up again. So definitely make as many connections as you can, because it'll definitely help your career in the long term. And who knows, you work somewhere and they're like, oh, we actually know someone at this other site that's looking for an archivist or a librarian, and that's how you make the connection there.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like we have some questions here from Ryan. Was a little confused about the records stored past 1846. Why was there a restriction on those records?
So, I've told Kellen why 1846 was the year, does anybody want to take a guess why 1846?
I mean, I would guess I thought part of it was probably for privacy reasons, but
Nope, stamps. Yeah, stamps. So the archivist picked 1846 because I think that's when stamps were like they were like the official thing that you had to do instead of just like the from like a ink pad type stamp, like the official stamps you would have to get at the post office. That's why he picked that year. Not for any particular reason or because of the certain history that those documents represented. It was literally stamps.
It's
And it's
definitely a
frustrating,
very unique opinion there, but
deciding factor.
yeah, that is, I guess, part of the archives world, especially in a small museum setting where um, standards are very loose when people don't have,
They they
experience
are
coming
out the
in.
window.
Yeah. Kind of going off of this kind of experience or specific skill set, coming from a collection. Oh, yeah, Maria, go ahead.
Uh, Hi, Carlo. Thank you so much. Very fascinating and big job on your shoulder. You mentioned internships. I'm Maria Del Bello, and I'm the faculty advisor for this wonderful group. So there is a Sky Jobs database, and I will put a link. And you can always, when you have money or not, announce on our list, but also through this database because it is approved by someone, but it also makes it visible to more people, even if it's
Yeah.
not paid, like it would be ideal. And we also have for credit opportunities.
Oh,
I'll let you
yeah,
know those. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. We would love to participate in that. I know we were talking, I forget who I was talking to, either the education coordinator or maybe the executive director about being more involved with like colleges and having the credit internships. So definitely I'll save that link. Oh, thank you, Cullen.
Oh, yeah, I muted myself. Yeah, no problem. That is definitely a great point. I think kind of, as we're kind of winding down here, getting towards our hour mark. Unless anyone else has any specific questions, I don't see anything in the chat right now, and if not, please interrupt me. Um, I think one of the more unique questions is probably my second to last one. What was when the archive is at a point where it is accessible, is there a specific group of individuals that you would imagine wouldn't want to take use of that, or have you thought about what type of like what at what point are parts of the collection in your mind available to be shared and viewed to a public setting outside of the museum? Because obviously house museums are valuable in that their resources are one of one and copies are bound to not really exist. But having access and being able to advertise for those collections is difficult for some institutions.
Yeah, that's a great question because I kind of ran into this over the summer. So I had a researcher from California reach out and say, "Hey, I saw from a New York Times article that you have this enumeration document. Can I have a copy of it?" And I was like, well, if we're doing virtual research, like we do charge. And this is when I had to take a step back and be like, okay, we need to develop a research policy. So it's kind of been flying by the seat of my pants. And if something comes up, I'm like, okay, how can we immediately address this? And because I wouldn't say forced, but we had to address the situation. We developed this research policy and we decided that Mondays and Wednesdays, the archive is open for the public to come and visit by appointment only. I don't think the information is currently on the website, but if you send me an email or you email the museum and you say you have an interest in looking in the archive, then we can arrange an appointment. But also with the grant that we are applying for to get the scanner, we had to think of these things as well. So we're hoping that getting a high resolution scanner, we can start the digitization process because some of the documents are too frail to bring out for people to do research. So having a scan would be great. It's just figuring out money and funding to acquire the scanner. But I see researchers being welcomed, I wouldn't say tomorrow, but in the future, probably now, like if you email me saying, hey, I want to see political records, when can I come and visit? I would say Monday or Wednesday, from 9 to 3. But I think it's going to be a long process to like digitize the records to make them fully accessible. But if you're local, you can come and visit the archive. I wouldn't say no. It would just be, okay, how can we figure out, how to best welcome people in the archive? And this has been a conversation I've been having with the executive director. So we are thinking about it. It's just we haven't had someone just come that doesn't work at the museum into the archive yet. I've had the museum staff come and do research, but I don't want to say outsiders, but anyone outside Liberty Hall, I haven't yet.
All right. Yeah, that's very true. And I guess for my last question is generally, what advice do you have for people interested in pursuing an archival career?
I didn't expect to be in this position, so going to school specifically for archiving, I think it's great that you guys are getting the education background because that's something that I definitely lacked. And I leaned on Kellen and Moore over the summer to see what they were learning in their classes, and seeing what information I can use. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. But my advice is to get as much experience as possible. Take whatever internship is offered to you, take whatever job is offered to you, and try different fields. So even though you're going for archiving, try museum education. Just try it because that is how you make these connections, and that's how you can develop contacts in different either fields or different museums or libraries. So just don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. And I said this to Seton Hall students as well. I'm like, just go for it. Like, don't be afraid, do one job in one field and do one job in the other and see what you like because you might think you like something. Like I thought I was going to do object work for the rest of my life. And then I discovered I hate China. I hate porcelain. I hate stoneware. And I can't stand looking at it anymore. I think maker's marks are cool, but I am tired of looking at teacups. And then I was like, okay, let's try documents. And now I like documents. So don't be afraid to step out of your boundaries is definitely one thing I would say.
All right, definitely agree there. Take the opportunities that are in front of you. Interdisciplinary skills are great, and you
Yeah.
never know who you will meet and what skills you'll gain. With archivists and museum education, having reference ability and people skills is very important. Being able to explain what's in a collection is very important, in a normal way to someone who may not know anything about that particular object. And so, yeah, I think these were all great questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And once again, thank you to Kayla for
Yeah.
presenting this evening. Just one final set of announcements here. Our next and likely final meeting for this semester, as will the timeline would put us into finals area, and I don't want to rush anyone away from that what they're studying and their exams. Our final meeting, I think, for this semester will be on November 17th. We'll be meeting with Michelle Childs from the New England Archivists and Providence College, and kind of with the end of the semester, with some of our e-board members graduating and may not being back in the spring semester, we will likely have some e-board positions open. And if you are interested, we will be reaching out in the email chains and all that good stuff. So, thank you again for joining tonight, and be on the lookout for our announcements for our November 17th meeting, which will be on a Monday at 6 p.m. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, Kayla.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.